This is chapter 5 and 6 summaries. So this chapter really focuses on the amendments and what they do for the laws. It starts out with federalism, which is a system of government in which power is divided between a central authority and constituent political units. It talks about the Supremacy Clause, which provides that the U.S. Constitution and all laws and treaties of the U.S. constitute the supreme law of the land. There's the separation of powers, which calls for Congress, the legislative branch, to enact legislation and appropriate funds. There's the Commerce Clause, which empowers Congress to regulate commerce with foreign nations, Indian tribes, and among the states. The impact of the amendments on business law. So, like the Bill of Rights, which is the first 10 amendments, prohibit the federal government from infringing on certain freedoms. This includes the First Amendment, which works to an extent with freedom of speech because there's obviously certain things that are considered not okay to say. Like the book gave the example that you can't yell fire in a packed movie theater when there's not actually a fire. The 14th Amendment applies the due process clause to the states. The 4th Amendment protects people from being unreasonably searched without a warrant. This has become a little tougher just because with technology improvements, it's made it easier to eavesdrop and everything, but you can't use that because you don't have that warrant, so they can't use that in the court of law. The 5th Amendment protects individuals against self-incrimination and double jeopardy and guarantees them the right to a trial by jury. For Chapter 6, it talks about criminal law, and criminal law is designed to punish an offender causing harm to the public health, safety, or morals of a person. They prohibit certain actions and specify the range of punishments for such conduct. And then there's 3 versions of crime, which is there's felony, misdemeanor, and petty crime. Felony is the worst and most serious and is punishable by death. Most people with felonies go to prison. And then a misdemeanor, you can either be fined or go to jail. And then petty crimes, you're either fined or incarcerated for less than 6 months. There's also the Miranda rights, which are when you're arrested that the cop has to tell you. And it's the right to remain silent and the right to an attorney. And then the factors to determine a substantial federal interest and the principles for federal prosecution include federal law enforcement priorities established by the Department of Justice, deterrent effect, the subject's culpability, the subject's willingness to cooperate, the subject's personal circumstances, the probable sentence, the possibility of prosecution in another jurisdiction, and non-criminal alternatives to prosecution. They also talked about plea bargaining, which is the negotiation of an agreement between the defendant's attorney and the prosecutor, where the defendant pleads guilty to a certain charge or charges in exchange for the prosecution reducing the charges. So a lot of times that can be less jail time or a higher fee and less jail time if they plead guilty. There's the insanity defense, which is if your mental health is causing you to go from right to wrong and then, or to differ from right from wrong, then you can be dismissed from that. The mistake of fact defense is the mistake made by the defendant that destroys the legal validity of criminal intent. It focused a lot on white-collar crime as well, which is a crime committed in a commercial context by a member of the professional managerial class. There are arguments for and against the corporate liability, but very few corporate officials are actually held accountable by law enforcement for the actions of their companies, and this is due to the delegation of responsibility to lower tiers of management and reliance on unwritten orders. The ways to prevent white-collar crimes include replacing state chartering with federal chartering, and corporations doing more than a certain amount of business being forced to hire a general public director, which could in turn prevent white-collar crimes.